I'm Layla, 34, and that day I thought I was just another guest at my mom's birthday party in the backyard of our suburban St. Louis home. The air was thick with tension, not celebration, as I stood by the dessert table trying to ignore the whispers. Then my brother stormed up his face, red eyes blazing. He grabbed a ceramic mug, my mom's favorite with little daisies painted on it, and smashed it on the ground. Shards flew everywhere. "Get out, you spoiled brat!" he screamed loud enough for every neighbor to hear. "You don't belong in this family." My heart pounded. I looked at my parents expecting them to say something, anything, but they just stood there, faces blank like they'd rehearsed this. The other guests froze forks halfway to their mouths. My brother kept glaring, his fists clenched, daring me to react. I wanted to scream back to demand why he'd turned a birthday party into a battlefield. But something in their silence, my parents' averted eyes, the way they didn't move, told me this wasn't just a tantrum. This was planned. If you were in this situation, would you stay silent and walk away or confront them right there? Share your thoughts in the comments. I left the party in a daze, driving straight to Shane's apartment in downtown St. Louis. He opened the door, took one look at my face, and didn't ask questions. "Crash here as long as you need," he said, handing me a spare key. I nodded, too shaken to talk, and collapsed on his couch. My phone still clutched in my hand from that call I'd made. The next morning, I opened my laptop, determined to figure out what was going on. My gut told me my brother's outburst wasn't just him losing it. There was something bigger, something planned. I logged into my company's bank account, the one tied to my event planning business. I'd built that company from nothing, booking weddings, corporate galas, and charity events across St. Louis. It was my pride, my proof I didn't need my family's approval to succeed. But as the app loaded, my stomach dropped. The balance was wrong. Way wrong. I scrolled through the transactions, my hands shaking. Over the past 3 months, there were dozens of small withdrawals, 500 here, 1,000 there, adding up to $40,000. Each one was labeled consulting fees or miscellaneous expenses, but I hadn't authorized any of them. I clicked into the account details, and there it was, Grayson's name listed as a secondary user. I'd added him years ago, back when we were still close to help with a few vendor payments. He hadn't touched the account in ages until now. I stared at the screen, my pulse racing. How could he do this? $40,000 siphoned off like I wouldn't notice. My first instinct was to call him, to scream, to demand answers. But Shane, sitting across from me with his coffee, shook his head. "Don't tip him off," he said. "If he's bold enough to steal, he's probably covering his tracks." Shane was right. I needed proof, something solid, to figure out why my family had turned on me. I opened my email, hoping for a clue. My inbox was a mess: proposals for upcoming events, vendor invoices, client follow-ups. But one message caught my eye, sent late last night from a client I'd worked with for years, a woman named Carla who ran a nonprofit. "Layla, I got a call from your brother," it read. "He said you're under too much stress to handle our gala next month and offered to take over. Is everything okay?" My jaw clenched. Stress. I wasn't stressed until last night, when my own brother humiliated me in front of everyone. I showed Shane the email. "He's trying to steal your clients," he said, his voice low. "This isn't just about the money." I scrolled through my inbox, searching for more. Sure enough, there were 2 other emails, one from a wedding planner, another from a corporate client. Both mentioned calls from my brother, both questioning my reliability. He'd been contacting my clients behind my back, painting me as unstable to take over my business. I felt sick, like the ground was slipping out from under me. This wasn't just a tantrum or sibling rivalry. Grayson was trying to ruin me, to take everything I'd built. And my parents, Mildred and Fred, had stood there at the party saying nothing. Were they in on it? The thought hit me like a punch. My own family plotting against me. I remembered Mom's nervous fidgeting, Dad's refusal to look me in the eye. They weren't just bystanders, they were part of this. Shane handed me a USB drive. "Start saving everything," he said. Emails, bank statements, anything that shows what he's doing. I nodded, my anger sharpening into focus. I forwarded Carla's email to a private folder and downloaded the bank transaction records. Then I noticed a notification on my phone, a voicemail from an unknown number. I played it, putting it on speaker so Shane could hear. It was a woman's voice, calm but urgent. "Layla, this is Ellen, your Grandpa Henry's lawyer. I have something important to discuss about his estate. Please call me back." Shane raised an eyebrow. "Grandpa Henry?" he asked. I shrugged, confused. Grandpa Henry had passed away 2 years ago, leaving me a small shop in St. Louis that I'd turned into my office. I thought his estate was settled. Why was his lawyer calling now? Could be nothing, I said, but my voice betrayed my doubt. Something told me this was connected to whatever Grayson was pulling. I spent the next day digging deeper. I logged into my company's client management software, checking for any unusual activity. There, it was a new login from an IP address I didn't recognize. Timestamped 2 weeks ago. Grayson had accessed my client list. I cross-checked the dates with the bank withdrawals. They lined up perfectly. He'd been planning this for months, maybe longer. I saved screenshots of the login history, my hands steady now, fueled by a mix of rage and determination. Shane sat with me as I combed through more emails. Another client, a tech startup, had received a message from Grayson offering to handle their product launch at a discount. "He's undercutting you," Shane said, shaking his head. "He wants your business gone." I clenched my fists, imagining Grayson smirking as he typed those emails. But why? What had I done to make him hate me this much? I thought back to our childhood, to the times Grayson would sulk when I got better grades or won awards. He'd always been competitive, but this was different. This was betrayal. And Mom and Dad standing by while he tried to destroy me. What kind of parents did that? I needed answers. But first, I needed to protect myself. I changed the passwords on all my accounts, locking Grayson out. Then I texted Carla, assuring her I was fine and still handling her gala. She replied, immediately relieved, promising to stick with me. 2 days later, I had a folder full of evidence, bank records, client emails, login screenshots. Shane looked at me, his expression serious. "You've got enough to confront him," he said. "But you need to be smart about this. If they're all in on it, you're walking into a fight." I nodded, my resolve hardening. Grayson thought he could push me out, but he didn't know who he was dealing with. The next morning, I opened my laptop, my fingers itching to uncover more of Grayson's betrayal. Shane, sprawled on his couch with a bowl of cereal, watched me work. "You're like a detective now," he said, half joking. I didn't laugh. This wasn't a game. My family was trying to destroy everything I'd built. I started with my company's cloud server, where I stored all our event planning files, contracts, invoices, even call recordings. I'd set up an auto-record feature for client calls last year, mostly to keep track of details for big events. I hadn't checked it in months, but if Grayson was bold enough to contact my clients, maybe he'd slipped up somewhere. I opened the audio folder, scrolling through files labeled by date and client name. My heart skipped when I saw one from 2 weeks ago, tagged with the name of a big client, a hotel chain planning a conference. I hit play. Grayson's voice came through, smooth and confident, talking to the hotel's event coordinator. "Layla's spread too thin," he said. "I can handle your conference at half her rate, same quality." My blood boiled. He wasn't just stealing my clients. He was undercutting me, trashing my reputation to take over my business. The coordinator sounded hesitant but interested, asking for a follow-up. I saved the file to my USB drive, my hands trembling with anger. This was proof clear as day that Grayson was sabotaging me. Shane leaned over, listening to the recording. "That's your brother?" he asked, incredulous. "He's not even hiding it." I nodded, my jaw tight. "He thinks he can walk all over me." Shane set his cereal down, his face serious. "You need to talk to a lawyer, Layla. This isn't just petty sibling stuff, this is theft, fraud, maybe worse." He was right. Grayson wasn't just jealous, he was breaking the law. I needed to protect my business, my future. I pulled up the bank records again, diving deeper into the transactions. There were more withdrawals I hadn't noticed before, smaller ones, a few $100s each, labeled as vendor payments or supplies. But I cross-checked them against my invoices. None matched. Grayson had been siphoning money for months, covering his tracks with fake labels. The total was still $40,000, but the sheer number of transactions, over 50, showed how deliberate this was. I screenshotted every single one, adding them to my evidence folder. As I worked, memories started creeping in unbidden. Grayson had always resented me, even as kids. I remembered him glaring when I won the school spelling bee, muttering that I only won because I sucked up to the teachers. When I started my event planning business, he'd scoffed, saying it would flop in a year. But it didn't. It thrived while he bounced between failed ventures and a messy divorce. Was that why he was doing this? Because I'd succeeded where he hadn't. The thought made my chest ache, but I pushed it aside. I couldn't afford to feel sorry for him. Shane interrupted my thoughts. "What about your parents?" he asked. "They were at the party, just standing there." "You think they're in on this?" I hesitated. Mom and Dad had always favored Grayson, especially after his divorce. They'd call him their poor boy, sending him money while barely asking about my business. But to help him steal from me, that was a new low. "I don't know," I admitted. "But their silence says enough." Shane frowned. "You need to be ready for anything, Layla. If they're backing him, this could get ugly." I nodded, my resolve hardening. I opened my phone and found the voicemail from Ellen, Grandpa Henry's lawyer, from yesterday. I hadn't had time to call her back, but Shane's words about lawyers made me realize I couldn't wait. I needed to know what she wanted, especially if it was about Grandpa Henry's estate. I saved the voicemail to my evidence folder just in case. Then I kept digging through the cloud server looking for more recordings. I found another one from a month ago with Grayson talking to a different client, a charity I'd worked with for years. "Layla's not reliable right now," he said. "I can step in, no problem." I clenched my fists, saving that file too. By day 5, I had a stack of evidence, bank screenshots, client emails, 2 audio recordings of Grayson badmouthing me. But I still needed to understand the full scope of his plan. I logged into my company's email server, checking the sent folder for anything suspicious. There was an email from my account sent last week that I hadn't written. It was to a major client canceling a contract I'd spent months securing. The signature was mine, but the IP address wasn't. Grayson had hacked my email. I felt a surge of rage, but also clarity. He wasn't just stealing money, he was trying to erase me from my own business. Shane watched me work, his expression a mix of admiration and concern. "You're relentless," he said. "But you need to pace yourself. This is heavy stuff." I shook my head. "I can't stop now, Shane. If I don't fight back, they'll take everything." He nodded, understanding. "Then let's get you to a lawyer. Someone who can make sure Grayson pays for this." I agreed, pulling up a contact I'd used before, a lawyer named Mark who specialized in small business disputes. I sent him a quick email summarizing the situation and attaching a few key screenshots. He replied within hours, asking to meet the next day. As I prepared for the meeting, more memories surfaced. Grayson's resentment wasn't new, but it had grown darker over time. I remembered a family dinner a year ago when he'd snapped at me for showing off about a big contract I'd landed. Mom had laughed it off, saying he was just teasing. Dad had stayed quiet, as always. Now their silence at the party made sense. They weren't just ignoring Grayson's outburst, they were complicit. The realization hit hard, but it also fueled me. I wasn't just fighting for my business, I was fighting for myself. I spent the rest of the week organizing my evidence, making sure every file was backed up. Mark, the lawyer, called to confirm our meeting, saying he'd review my documents beforehand. Shane stayed by my side, helping me sort through the mess, his presence a reminder that I wasn't alone. But as I closed my laptop, I knew the real battle was coming. Grayson thought he could break me, but he was about to find out how wrong he was. That afternoon, I called Ellen back, my heart pounding as the phone rang. Ellen Grandpa Henry's lawyer had left that cryptic voicemail about his estate, and I couldn't shake the feeling it was tied to Grayson's betrayal. When she answered, her voice was warm but professional. "Layla, I'm glad you called," she said. "I have a letter from your grandfather. It's important." "Can you meet me at my office tomorrow?" I agreed, setting an appointment for the next morning. After hanging up, I stared at my phone, wondering what Grandpa Henry could have left behind that was so urgent. The next day, I drove to Ellen's office in downtown St. Louis, my evidence folder tucked under my arm. I'd spent the past week gathering proof, bank records, client emails, Grayson's damning audio recordings. But this meeting felt different, like it could change everything. Ellen greeted me with a firm handshake and led me to a small office lined with legal books. She handed me a sealed envelope, the paper yellowed with age, stamped with Grandpa Henry's name. "He left strict instructions," she said. "This was to be given to you if your family ever contested your inheritance." I tore open the envelope, my hands trembling. Inside was a handwritten letter from Grandpa Henry dated 2 years ago, just before he passed. His familiar scrawl brought a lump to my throat. "Dear Layla," it began, "if you're reading this, it means your family has shown their true colors. I left you the shop in St. Louis because I knew you'd make something of it. But there's more you need to know." My eyes scanned the page and my breath caught as I read the next lines. Grandpa Henry revealed that my family, Grayson Mom and Dad, had manipulated Lucas, my old business partner, years ago. Lucas and I had started our event planning company together back when we were both young and ambitious. We were good booking high-profile events across Missouri, but 3 years ago, Lucas had suddenly pulled out, claiming bankruptcy. I'd been devastated taking on the business alone while he vanished from my life. Grandpa Henry's letter explained why my family had pressured Lucas into taking on bad loans, funneling money from our company to cover their own financial messes. When Lucas couldn't pay, they pushed him out, leaving him broke and humiliated to hide their fraud. I sat back stunned. Mom and Dad, they'd always acted so innocent, fussing over Grayson's struggles while praising my independence. But they were part of this. The letter went on, detailing how they'd used a shell company to siphon funds, with Grayson handling the paperwork. Grandpa Henry had found out too late, but he'd rewritten his will to protect me, leaving me the shop outright. "They'll try to take it from you," he wrote. "Don't let them. You're stronger than they know." I looked up at Ellen, my voice shaky. "Why didn't he tell me sooner?" She sighed, adjusting her glasses. "He wanted to protect you from the fallout. He thought they'd leave you alone if he was gone." I clutched the letter, anger mixing with grief. Grandpa Henry had always believed in me, even when I doubted myself. He'd taken me to that shop as a kid, letting me play among the empty shelves, telling me I could build anything I wanted. Now it was mine, and my family was trying to steal it. I called Shane from the parking lot, my voice tight with emotion. "You won't believe this," I said, summarizing the letter. Shane let out a low whistle. "Your parents too. That's cold?" I nodded, though he couldn't see me. "I trusted them, Shane. All of them." He was quiet for a moment, then said, "You've got the letter. That's power. Use it." I knew he was right. This wasn't just about money or clients anymore. It was about exposing my family for what they'd done to me and to Lucas. Back at Shane's apartment, I reread the letter, each word fueling my resolve. I thought about Lucas, how he'd always been the dreamer, sketching event layouts while I handled the logistics. We'd been a team until he disappeared. I'd blamed him for abandoning me, but now I saw the truth: my family had destroyed him to cover their tracks. I pulled up my old contact list, searching for Lucas's number. I needed to talk to him to understand his side, but his number was disconnected. I sent a message to a mutual friend asking if they knew where he was. No reply yet. I met with Mark, my lawyer, the next day. He'd reviewed the evidence I sent: bank records, emails, recordings. When I showed him Grandpa Henry's letter, his eyes widened. "This is big, Layla," he said. "If we can verify this, it's not just theft, it's fraud, maybe even conspiracy." He suggested hiring a private investigator to dig into the shell company Grandpa Henry mentioned. I agreed, signing the paperwork to start the process. Mark also advised preparing for a confrontation. Your family might try to discredit you, he warned. They could claim you're unstable like they did with Lucas. That thought sent a chill down my spine. Grayson's emails to my clients calling me stressed and unreliable suddenly made sense. They weren't just after my business, they wanted the shop, the one thing Grandpa Henry had left me. I remembered Mom's nervous smile at the party, Dad's averted eyes. They weren't just complicit, they were orchestrating this with Grayson. The betrayal cut deeper than I'd imagined, but it also clarified things. I wasn't just fighting for my shop. I was fighting for justice for Lucas, for Grandpa Henry's trust in me. Over the next few days, I kept building my case. I contacted a former accountant who'd worked with Lucas and me, asking for old financial records. She promised to dig through her files. I also reached out to another client Grayson had targeted, confirming they'd received his calls. Every piece of evidence felt like a brick in the wall I was building against my family. Shane stayed close, helping me organize the files, his calm presence keeping me grounded. "You're doing the right thing," he said one night as I stared at Grandpa Henry's letter. "He'd be proud of you." 2 weeks later, I had a clear picture of my family's deception. The letter from Grandpa Henry wasn't just a will, it was a weapon. I wasn't sure how to use it yet, but I knew one thing: I wasn't going to let them take what was mine. I'd confront them soon on my terms, in the place Grandpa Henry had given me. A weeks later, I walked into my shop, the one Grandpa Henry had left me, my heart racing but my steps steady. I'd invited Grace and Mom and Dad to meet me here, telling them we needed to talk about the business. I didn't say more, but the weight of Grandpa Henry's letter and my evidence folder gave me a strange calm. This was my turf, my legacy, and I was done letting them think they could take it from me. The shop's bell jingled as Grayson stormed in first, his face set in a scowl. Mom and Dad followed, their expressions guarded, like they were walking into a trap. They weren't wrong. I stood behind the counter, my evidence folder hidden in a drawer, Grandpa Henry's letter tucked in my pocket. "Thanks for coming," I said, my voice even. Grayson crossed his arms. "What's this about, Layla? You're wasting our time?" I almost laughed. Wasting their time. After everything they'd done before I could respond, Mom stepped forward holding a manila envelope. "We're worried about you, sweetheart," she said, her voice dripping with fake concern. "You've been under so much stress running this business alone." Dad nodded, his eyes fixed on the floor. "We just want what's best for you," he added, barely audible. I clenched my jaw. Their act might have fooled me once, but not now, not after Grandpa Henry's letter exposed their lies. Grayson cut in, his tone sharp. "Let's get to the point. You're not fit to run this shop, Layla. We've got proof." He gestured to the envelope in Mom's hand. She opened it, pulling out a document stamped with a medical seal. "This is from Dr. Kessler," she said, sliding it across the counter. "It says, you've been showing signs of instability, erratic behavior, poor decision-making. We're filing to have you declared unfit to manage your assets." I stared at the paper, my pulse spiking. Dr. Kessler. I'd never met the man. The document was a forgery, plain and simple, accusing me of mental instability to seize control of the shop. I looked at Grayson, his smirk barely hidden, then at Mom and Dad, their faces a mix of guilt and defiance. They thought they could intimidate me, just like they'd done to Lucas. But I wasn't Lucas. I pulled Grandpa Henry's letter from my pocket, unfolding it slowly. "You want to talk about proof?" I said, my voice steady, despite the anger burning inside me. "Grandpa Henry left me this shop, and he saw through you all. He wrote this before he died." I held up the letter, watching their eyes widen. "He warned me you'd try to take it. And he included a clause. If anyone contests my inheritance, the shop goes to a charity, not you." Grayson's face paled. "You're bluffing," he snapped, but his voice wavered. Mom's hands trembled, the envelope slipping slightly. Dad finally looked up, his expression uneasy. "Layla, let's not make this messy," he said, almost pleading. I shook my head. You made it messy when you helped Grayson steal from me. When you ruined Lucas to cover your fraud. The air in the shop grew heavy. Grayson took a step forward, his fists clenched. You don't know what you're talking about, he growled. Lucas was a failure, just like you'll be if you keep this up. I didn't flinch. I know everything, I said, pulling out my phone. I've got bank records, emails, recordings of you trashing me to my clients. And this letter I tapped Grandpa Henry's note proves you've been lying for years. I'm giving it all to the police and a reporter I know. You're done. Mom gasped, clutching Dad's arm. Layla, you wouldn't, she whispered. We're your family. I met her eyes, my voice cold. Family doesn't betray each other. You chose Grayson over me, over Lucas, over Grandpa Henry's wishes. Dad tried to speak, but I cut him off. Don't. I'm not listening to excuses anymore. Grayson lunged for the letter, but I stepped back, slipping it into my pocket. Try that again, and I'll call the cops right now, I warned. The shop was silent, the tension thick enough to choke on. Grayson's bravado crumbled, his shoulders slumping. Mom's eyes filled with tears, but I didn't soften. Dad just stood there, useless as always. I opened the drawer, pulling out my evidence folder. This is everything, I said, holding it up. Bank transactions, your calls to my clients, the fake email you sent. I've already talked to a lawyer, and he's ready to file charges. Walk away now, or I send this to the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. Grayson's jaw tightened, but he didn't speak. Mom tried one last time. Layla, please, we can work this out. I shook my head. You had your chance. You chose this. I pointed to the door. Get out. They hesitated, exchanging glances, but the weight of my words and the evidence in my hand finally sank in. Grayson stormed out, first slamming the door so hard the bell rattled. Mom and Dad followed their footsteps, slow, defeated. I stood alone in the shop, my heart pounding but my mind clear. This was the moment I took back my life. The next morning, I drafted an email to Hannah, a local journalist who'd covered my charity galas for years. She worked for the St. Louis Chronicle, a paper with a knack for digging into local scandals. I'd always liked her. She was sharp, fair, and didn't shy away from hard truths. Hannah, I wrote, I've uncovered something big about my family. Can we meet? I attached a zipped folder with my evidence, bank records showing Grayson's unauthorized withdrawals, audio recordings of him bad-mouthing me to clients, the fake email he'd sent, and Grandpa Henry's letter exposing their fraud against Lucas. I hesitated for a moment, my finger hovering over the send button. This would change everything. Then I clicked. Hannah replied within hours, asking to meet at a coffee shop downtown. When I arrived, she was already there, sipping a latte, her notebook open. Layla, this is explosive, she said, after I walked her through the evidence. Her eyes gleamed with the kind of intensity only a journalist chasing a big story could have. You're sure you want to go public? This'll hit your family hard. I nodded, my voice steady. They hit me first. And Lucas. And Grandpa Henry's legacy. I want the truth out there. She jotted down notes, promising to verify everything before publishing. After the meeting, I drove to the St. Louis police station, my evidence folder in hand. The officer at the desk, a gruff man named Detective Carter, listened as I explained Grayson's theft, the fake medical document, and my family's manipulation of Lucas. He flipped through my files, his eyebrows raising at the recordings. This is solid, he said, scribbling in his notepad. We'll open an investigation, but it'll take time. Fraud cases like this are tricky. I thanked him, feeling a weight lift. The law was on my side now. A week later, Hannah's article hit the front page of the Chronicle. The headline screamed, "Local family accused of fraud and betrayal in business scandal." It laid out everything: Grayson's attempt to steal my clients the $40,000 he'd siphoned, the forged document claiming I was unstable, and Grandpa Henry's letter revealing their role in Lucas's ruin. Hannah had even tracked down Lucas, who confirmed he'd been pressured into bad loans by my family. The article didn't hold back, calling their actions a calculated betrayal of trust. St. Louis buzzed with the news. By noon, my phone was flooded with messages from clients, friends, even distant relatives. Some expressed shock, others support. One client, Carla, texted, "I knew you were the real deal, Layla. Keep fighting." But the fallout for my family was swift. Grayson's business contacts dropped him overnight, unwilling to touch someone linked to fraud. I heard through a mutual acquaintance that his latest venture, a shady consulting firm, was crumbling. Mom and Dad faced their own reckoning. Neighbors who'd once invited them to barbecues now whispered behind their backs. Their church group, where they'd been pillars for years, asked them to step down from leadership roles. Then the calls started. Mom left a voicemail, her voice shaky. "Layla, we need to talk. We're still family." I deleted it without responding. Dad tried next, sending a text. "We made mistakes, but we can fix this." I stared at the words, my anger flaring. Fix this. They'd stood by while Grayson tried to destroy me, lied about my mental health, and ruined Lucas. There was no fixing that. Grayson didn't reach out directly, but I got a message from one of his friends pleading for me to let it go for the sake of family unity. I blocked the number. Shane came by the shop that afternoon holding a copy of the Chronicle. "You did it," he said, a grin spreading across his face. "They're done." I shook my head, not quite smiling. "It doesn't feel like a win yet," I admitted. The truth was out, but the pain of their betrayal still lingered. Shane sat on a stool, his expression softening. "You stood up to them, Layla. That's more than most people could do." I nodded, grateful for his support, but my heart was heavy. I'd lost my family, not just their trust, but any hope of reconciliation. Over the next few days, more fallout came. A local business association dropped Grayson from their roster, citing ethical concerns. Mom and Dad's social circle shrank further. I heard they'd stopped attending community events. Part of me wanted to feel sorry for them, but every time I thought of Grandpa Henry's letter of Lucas's broken dreams, I pushed that pity away. They'd chosen this path, not me. I met with Detective Carter again, who updated me on the investigation. They'd subpoenaed Grayson's bank records and were looking into the shell company Grandpa Henry had mentioned. "We're building a case," he said, his tone reassuring. "Your evidence is strong." I thanked him, feeling a flicker of hope. Justice was slow, but it was coming. Hannah called to check in, her article still generating buzz. "People are talking, Layla," she said. "You're a hero to a lot of folks." I didn't feel like a hero, just someone who'd fought to protect what was hers. I thanked her for telling the truth, for giving Lucas a voice, for honoring Grandpa Henry's legacy. She promised to follow the case as it developed. As I locked up the shop one evening, my phone buzzed with another message from Mom. "Please, Layla, just one conversation," it read. I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering over the reply button. For a moment, I remembered her baking cookies when I was a kid, Dad teaching me to ride a bike. But those memories were overshadowed by their lies, their silence at the party, their willingness to let Grayson destroy me. I deleted the message and turned off my phone. I wasn't going back. The shop, my business, my life. They were mine now, free from their manipulation. I'd fought for every piece of it, and I wasn't letting go. 1 month later, I poured my energy into my event planning business, transforming the shop into its new headquarters. The empty shelves where I'd played as a kid now held binders of contracts and mood boards for upcoming galas. Clients streamed in, drawn by the Chronicle's article and word of mouth about my resilience. Carla, my loyal client, booked me for a corporate retreat, saying, "You've got grit, Layla. I trust you." Her words lit a spark in me, a quiet pride that grew with every new project. Within months, I hired 2 assistants and expanded to handle events across Missouri, each success a step away from my family's shadow. But it wasn't enough to just rebuild. I'd seen what betrayal could do, not just to me, but to Lucas, whose dreams my family had crushed. I wanted to help others like us, people blindsided by those they trusted most. So I launched a program through my company called Second Start, offering free workshops for people rebuilding after family conflicts. We provided counseling, referrals, resume coaching, and entry-level jobs in event planning. At our first workshop, a young woman named Sarah shared how her brother had sabotaged her small business. I listened, nodding, and offered her a part-time role on my team. Seeing her smile, tentative but hopeful, felt like a victory. Shane stopped by, often bringing coffee and his usual easy grin. "You're building an empire," he teased one afternoon, leaning against the counter. I laughed, shaking my head. "Not an empire, just a life I can be proud of." He nodded, his eyes warm. "That's more than enough." His support, steady through every storm, reminded me I wasn't alone. I didn't need my family's approval to feel whole. The police investigation moved forward slower than I'd hoped, but steady. Detective Carter called with updates saying they'd traced the shell company to Grayson and were close to pressing charges. I didn't gloat, but I felt a quiet satisfaction knowing justice was coming. Hannah, the journalist, kept in touch too, her follow-up article praising my new program and calling me a beacon for those betrayed. I didn't feel like a beacon, just someone who'd learned to stand up for herself. As I locked the shop one evening, I looked at the sign above the door, now reading Layla's events. Grandpa Henry's legacy wasn't just the building, it was the belief I could rise above. I'd spent years trying to keep my family together, ignoring their slights, their favoritism, their lies. But I'd learned something harder, truer: family doesn't get a free pass to hurt you. Standing up for myself, exposing their fraud, choosing my own path, that was my strength. It wasn't about revenge. It was about justice, about claiming the life I deserved. I walked home under the St. Louis sky, the weight of betrayal gone, replaced by a calm I hadn't known in years. I'd fought for my truth, for Lucas's, for Grandpa Henry's. And in doing so, I'd found something stronger than family ties: my own resilience. If anyone out there is struggling, wondering if they can break free from those who hurt them, let my story be proof you can. Protect your worth, seek justice, and build a life that's yours alone.